All right. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me are Mike Colatruglio and Michelle Duncan. And the assessor today is Merrick Froelich, and the administrative personnel is Stephen Lunn. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along in the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for a revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application is being brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 3, 6, and 8 on our docket today. Mr. Lund, please affirm the assessors and applicant's testimony. The first property will be 1399 Dougal Road.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Merrick Froelich.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, if you please stand. Please state your full name.
Amy Brise.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Okay. So Mr. Froelich on 1399 Dougal Road.
File number is 24916. Roll number is 0605295600. The initial assessed value for this property was $395,000, and I am making a recommendation to reduce it $345,000. It's a one-story building. The effective year built are between 1967 and 1993. The plan area for this building is 2,570 square feet, and the leasable area is the same, with a land to building ratio of 10.58. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing the income and expense mailer. And if you can see on the bottom of page 2, there's some interesting things that I've noticed here. One of them is that the reported management expenses is 50% of the gross revenue, or of the gross expenses, and the gross rent is $14 a square foot. With our shortfall of $4, the net rent that we'd have for this property being reported is $10. You can see some other detailed information on page 3 with regards to one of the tenants. On page 4, you'll see the initial value where the leasable area is 2570. We used a rent of 859. Vacancy allowance of 1.5%, expenses is 3, shortfall is 4. Coming up with a net operating income of 20,914 with a 5.3% cap rate, where the value was 395. Only difference in the recommendation is that I reduced the rent to $7.50, and that's how I came up with my value of $345,000.
Okay, Mr. Applicant, how do you feel about the recommendation?
I don't agree.
You don't agree? Okay. So, Mr. Froelich, then please continue on with your presentation.
Yep, for sure. So on page 6, what we've done here is I've tried to get some similar comparable properties that are on smaller sizes. And the range of rents that we're using are from $7.50 to $9.86. Looking at the Winnipeg area fundamentals, the overall vacancy that we have is from the Q1 of 2023 is 2%, and asking average rent is $11. There's also been provided some information with regards to the industrial cap rate report done by Colliers, which can be seen on page 7, 8, and 9, and our overall cap rate review on page 10. On page 12 and 13, you see the authorization. And that concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Applicant, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
On September 6, 2023, the said property was assessed at $437. I appealed that and they brought it down to $285. And within a year.
Okay, this is the part for questions of the assessor, not for your presentation. So if you have
my presentation,
okay, but do you have any questions specifically of the assessor on his presentation?
So one thing is, according to the letter from the city, is that all documents are supposed to be provided a week prior to today, and then I received this today without having a chance to look at it. So number one is, how come I only received this today? On top of that, why is he, if I look at his Q23 high, the rental income, why is he renting, going on rental at the top amount of dollar here when my unit is an older unit on slab? The front is a ditch that floods every time there's there's a snow melt or there is a
Okay, once again, you're getting into your presentation.
Okay, so then my presentation is, how come I did not receive this letter prior?
Okay, Mr. Froelich or Mr. Lund, can you tell us when the city dropped off their package?
Absolutely. We only exchange evidence when we've received briefs from both parties. That is our policy. So we didn't receive a brief from the applicant at the 2-week evidence exchange point, so we didn't exchange evidence then. And then we provide a copy of the assessor's brief in scenarios where there hasn't been an evidence exchange for that reason.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr.
So
Applicant,
is this just a one-way track then? Because so if the applicant doesn't send something, how could, if the other ones have something to provide, why isn't it provided?
well,
Sounds to me that it's
the purpose is to enable a level playing field so that both parties receive the other's brief at the same time.
So maybe if I would have received just like them, their pamphlet right away, then it would have reminded me to send my pamphlet.
Well, the onus is on you to send your brief in within the
Well, according to this letter here, that's not what I read. I read that if I had documents to bring them in by the 13th to the board, but it doesn't tell me that the city will wait to see if I receive it before they send me something.
they bring it into the board of revision at on the same date that you were required to.
Yeah, so that's not same playing field then.
Well, both parties are expected to drop at the same time without seeing the other party's presentation.
So I could provide my documents now to them?
Well, we would leave that up. They would be received late, so we would leave that up to Mr. Froelich if he wishes to receive to accept your brief as late evidence.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Froelich, are you willing to receive the applicant's brief as late evidence?
Yeah, but I just want the applicant to realize that I was following the rules by the process. The due date for the brief was on August 13th, and I had also been in communication with the property owner on 3 separate occasions with regards to coming to a value and hoping to receive some pictures from the applicant. So I have no problems receiving it now, but it would have been beneficial if I could have received it 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely. So the board revision rules are 2 weeks in advance, and then the briefs are exchanged. Okay.
What I don't understand is that why would pictures make that much of a difference when he has a car and he has a vehicle that
Well, we're
do
not.
assessments, you go look at the building. Why do you need
The city
pictures?
has indicated that they're willing to accept your late presentation, so we'll just move on from there. Do you have it electronically, Mr. Lund?
I do not have it electronically, I
No.
received nothing.
It's right here on my desk.
Okay. I guess we'll proceed with the verbal then. And could you please provide a copy after this hearing so that we will have it on file?
Yes.
Okay, is there any further questions,
Yes,
Mr. Applicant?
I was asking about the rent value. Why is he going to charging me rent according to the highest value on his spreadsheet?
Mr.
Well,
Froelich?
Page 7.
On page 7's page 6 is my comparables. But what I've done here is I've reduced the rent from $8.58 to $7.50. And then when we look at the income and expense mailer that's been sent to us, it states that the gross rent for this property is $14 a square foot. And so what I did with the math is I went $3,000 times 12 equals $36,000 divided by the leasable area, which is 2572, which works out to $14 rounded. So being mindful of what the assessment was before, and if the gross rent's $14, our standard shortfall's $4, I netted out the rent at $10, and then I reduced the rent from the $10, which is what the actual being reported, to $7.50.
But you don't take in consideration any expenses.
No, that's what I've
And on
done.
top of that, the $3,000 a month, that tax is included.
Yeah, so what I've done here is I'm not using $14. I'm using $10, so that $4 difference between what you're actually receiving is going towards your expenses to run the building. Because in all the data that we calculate for industrial properties, we said the CAM expenses works out to about $4 a square foot. And so what I've done here is I've actually reduced it, from $14. I've cut it. I've used the $6.50 shortfall from what you're actually receiving.
Okay, any further questions, Mr. Applicant? Mr. Applicant, do you have any further questions of the assessor?
Well, since I didn't have much time to look at these forms, I'm trying to put it together right now in my brain. So if I could have a few minutes to look into this.
Well, we are supposed to come ready for this hearing.
Without having documents,
Well, I mean, we've explained how that came to be.
well, that's one-sided. It's all one-sided. That's totally-
Well, with all due respect, it's not one-sided.
Well, with all due
The-
respect, I could ask this to be in French also. Okay, I haven't even had an offer to provide this paperwork. There's nothing in here that tells me to have it in French, that I could apply for French or anything. So in all due respect, I respect to have some time to read this. Otherwise, I will ask for this to be provided in French at a later time.
No, we will proceed with the hearing now. The documents
Okay.
were available.
Then I want this processed in French at a later time.
Have you indicated that to the board prior
Nobody
to the
had
hearing?
asked me, nor does it ask me to even have that option on here. Which is totally illegal in the city of Winnipeg, especially St. Boniface.
Applicants are given the opportunity to present in French if they wish. They have to indicate to the board beforehand.
As I said, I didn't have nothing on here says anything. There's not even a phone number. There's nothing for me to reference. There's not even an email address. Yes, there is an email address to confirm your registration. Hearing, please note, that's all there is.
So Chairman, I can just interject for a moment. Could we
Okay.
give the applicant a few minutes just to read it over? It may give them an opportunity to have a look at it. If we take a quick recess, he can look at it meanwhile.
Okay, yeah, that's probably wise. We'll take a 10-minute recess until 9:30 for the applicant to read the document.
The chair, maybe also go on camera during that time.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to put the assessor in the waiting room.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Applicant, have you had a chance to read the city's brief? Mr. Applicant, have you read the city's brief? Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Do you have any questions regarding the city's brief, Mr. Applicant?
The previous brief?
Well, the city's brief, yeah. Now that you've had a
Okay.
chance to
Yes.
read it, do you have any
Yes.
questions from it?
Yes. So page 2, where I had did this calculation. The adjuster, or I don't know what you represent,
It's assessed.
the assessor there forgot that in 2023, my taxes were based on 5,000 square feet. So at $14 a square feet, that included the tent that was in the back at that time in 2023, which he is aware because I argued the fact because the city made me take down the structure and it brought down the local area to 2,500 square feet leasable building. So since then, since I haven't corrected my $3,000 a month, but my tenant has given me notice to leave, and because of that structure isn't there anymore. So his $14 a square feet is not correct. And on top of that, on on his income valuation summary, I don't understand how he could come up with an expense, a total expense for a building of $806 when you're running,
That-
when you have snow clearing, you got floods, you got everything else, maintenance and everything else, that he assumes that an expense could only be $806. And then if I look at his land that the properties that he has referred to, these are all properties that are downtown. Downtown where you have a bus stop right in front of your location. You have water and sewer drainage at your approach. You don't have a gravel approach, the city provides an approach. You have you have all these different things. You have pickup of garbage, which we don't. So I believe, I strongly believe that his assessment of $14 and or his assessment of my property being worth $385,000, I don't believe that you're calculating it properly.
Okay, Mr. Froelich, can you
Well-
answer the,
Well, there, it's hard to remember all the different questions here, okay? But for starters here, there's something that maybe the applicant doesn't understand with our process. The initial assessment that occurred in his documentation had a reference date of April 1st, 2020. The reference date that we're looking here right now for 2025 is April 1st, 2023. So there's a difference in value. The initial assessed value for the property that was appealed in 2024 was $437,000. We removed the structure, and the assessed value was reduced to 285. So that at that time, we reduced the area, because initially the area on the certified value, which was exactly what the applicant had stated, is that the very first value that went out for 2023, well, let me just double check here, the certified was an area of 5,290 square feet. So if you look at my workup on page 4 and 5, the assessment department is utilizing an area of 2,570 square feet. Right? So this is an error that was changed from the last assessment, where we had reduced the assessment to the 285 as mentioned. Right? When we looked at the rent that we provided, we felt that the rent that provided of $7.50 is fair for the type of building that it is. With regards to yeah, and I can't remember the other questions that were asked, so I apologize.
okay, Mr. Applicant, any further questions of the city?
Yeah, so he's saying the rent, the evaluation is $7.50. That's not the evaluation that I have in front of me here.
No, but that's the recommendation that I am making to the board today of $345,000.
Yeah, it's on page 5 of the city's brief
And on page 1.
and page 1 as well, but page 5 is the workup. Okay, any further questions?
No, I don't have further questions.
Okay, Mr. Colatruglio, do you have questions?
With respect to the $7.50 rate that you've chosen, Mr. Phillips, you felt that the comparables that you have on page 6 of your brief, this was similar types of properties in your opinion?
Well, looking at an industrial park area of 545 King Edward Street and looking for the areas as well, right? So one of my comparables is $7.50, which is the lowest one that I have here, which is originally of the 1964 building, right? And so this building here was built in 3 phases, 67, 93, and 2000. I'm not sure which is which, but I feel comfortable with the rent that I've used.
Can I say something?
And when I look at the rent that was used for the last assessment, it was $6.78 in 2024 or 2023, 2024. So with regards to the changes of the industrial marketplace, I think $7.50 is a reasonable rent to be.
And I'll ask another question, Mr. Perlich. In respect to the immediate area adjacent to the property, the subject property, mostly owner occupied, I'm assuming, in that area?
Yeah, and rents are hard to get. Like 65% of industrial properties are owner occupied.
That was the case that you found on Google?
Yeah.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, Ms. Duncan, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Vacancy 1.5%. Why, that strikes me as being kind of low. Why is it 1.5% and not say around 4%?
Well, in my brief that I provided from the Winnipeg marketplace, they're showing a Winnipeg area fundamentals of 2%, and the St. Boniface property has experienced a lower rent of a lower vacancy based on all the rents and all the information I received from the income and expense mailer process. So different areas have different vacancy rates.
Okay.
You know, and so we noticed in our evaluation process that vacancy rates have dropped, and this property, based on the information that we have as of today, or that we know of, that it hasn't been vacated. There hasn't been the history of vacancy for this property.
Okay, but we use community averages usually for vacancies. Now the cap rate, 5.3%. I noticed that that's below the 20th percentile. Why is that?
Well, it's based on the analysis that we had done with regards to all the sales that had taken place for properties. And in 2023, the cap rate was 5.4% for the last evaluation process.
5.4, but okay, so then why would the cap rate go down with interest rates rising and that sort of thing?
Well, when we collected the data, the turning point was the summer of 2022. And so you're collecting sales data from all the sales that had taken place. Because interest rates had been rising quite significantly afterwards, you know, there wasn't as many sales data that we were able to capture.
Okay.
So this is based on everything that we were able to create our cap rates with. Because prior to that, prior to the summer of 2022, interest rates didn't have the increase that it had that
Yeah,
we've been experiencing right
true.
now.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. So, Mr. Applicant, you can begin your presentation.
If you have a question, maybe you could ask the question now. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I believe the applicant does have one further follow-up question.
Okay, go ahead.
My question was that he was saying about the assessor was saying about my property 1967 to 1963 to 1993 is the bill. In 2000, that's when I put up that shelter in the back. That was a tent or canvas shelter. So it really has no issue on the dates of what of the buildings that are on hand at the moment.
Yeah, well, I'm just basing that on the information that you provided to us in your brief. In your brief, you're showing a 2,000-year roll built, and in our documentation, I'm showing effective year builds of 1967 and 1993. So the 2000, I was referencing that off of your information that you provided to us.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Mr. Applicant, you
So
can.
then it had nothing to do with your assessment then?
Well, I just saw this piece of documentation at 9:42 today. And
Okay.
I was reading off of it, but when I look at my documentation, it says effective years built of 1967 and 93.
Yeah. That's
Nowhere on my document does it say the year 2000.
Okay, I was just wondering why you were bringing up the 2000. That's all.
Well, it was provided in your brief, sir.
Yep. Okay, you answered. That's perfect.
Okay, Mr. Applicant, you may begin your brief then.
So as you see, on the documents are provided, the building is a very simple building. There's no asphalt, there's no nothing to bring up the value excessively. As I was saying earlier, the assessment, the building was assessed for 5,000 square feet for till 2023, I believe. At which part the total area has been brought down to 2520. And that the value of the rental that the assessor had used was based on what the previous square footage was. And also talking about rental, the space to rent. As I say, it's not as lucrative as other parts of St. Boniface when you have 3 different buses every 15 minutes that come by for your employees and so on and so forth. Here, the closest bus stop would probably be a quarter mile away, either on La Jamordière or the other one is at I can't remember. It's a
Rougeau?
Yeah, I think it's Rougeau. Yeah. Yeah, that's where the the pump station is, I think. Yeah, that's where. So people that want to come to work, less privileged people that can't use a car or a bus when it's -30 outside, very hard to get employees in the area. And also we have ditches that fill up and are always frozen in the spring, that the water overruns and floods the parking lot and the building. I unfortunately I couldn't find my pictures of, as the assessor was mentioning, I couldn't find the pictures of the inside of my building getting flooded all the time. That's why he didn't get them. And gravel front entrance, the first, I believe, 15 feet is supposed to be managed by the city, which is never managed. We have to maintain it all the time. There's truckers that pull over on the side of the shoulder, they sink out of sight because it's so saturated with water all the time. And the property is limited to what I could have to build on. As the tent, I had to take it apart because the city of Winnipeg was saying there was no room for fire trucks to get to the back and extinguish a fire if there was a fire. So having a deep lot and narrow really restricts anything I could do with the property, or for people that want to rent it and add something or do anything to it. The building is pretty well an obstruction to do anything. And as I said, there is a few buildings on Dougal Road that have been up for lease for over probably 2 years, and the signs are still up there and are not able to rent out. Therefore, I'm not sure why he says the rental rate is so high or so promising on this stretch of Dougal Road. Therefore, I believe since it was reassessed in 2024, as the assessor said, it was at $437,000, and it was brought down to $285,000, and now they want to bring it up again another $100,000. I don't understand where they get this amount. I do not agree with it. The assessments are supposed to be done every 2 years. I went through this last year for 2024, and now I'm going through it again for 2025. So I don't understand. Like I told the assessor, if you would bring it up $50,000, I'd probably be okay with that, but not $100,000, as he has mentioned.
Just to correct you, his revised recommendation is 345,000, so not 395,000. So that's the number we're dealing with now, is $345,000.
Do you have a evaluation of the property yourself, sir?
No, I didn't get it.
Okay, what would you feel is a fair market value for your property then?
In 2023,
Yes, for this current assessment cycle.
if I could get 325,000 in 2023, that would probably be a good estimate.
Okay, Mr. Froelich, any questions of the applicant?
You're muted, Mr. Assessor.
I have no questions, but I'll just make a summation if you don't mind.
Sure, we'll do that at the end. Ms. Duncan, any questions?
Just a couple. How long have you had the current tenant?
Oh, I think it's going on 3 years, but it's month to month, as he didn't want to put a term lease on it because he was looking around to move.
Thank you. That was my second question, was there a lease in place? And then in regards to the ongoing damage from flooding, is there any repairs, any major improved
Yes,
regard?
from my part, you mean? If
Yeah,
I did,
yeah.
yes, I built like a dam on the east side. No, sorry, the west side. I cut the concrete inside the back part of the building, so I could put some weeping towels to try to grab the water below grade prior to flooding the floor. I also put a sump pit in the back of the garage, or the second part of that building, which is a garage, in the ground outside, and I run a sump pump to the back of the property, as there's a ditch there where the old railway crossing was, which is now being filled by the new owner that owns that land that he bought to the rail station. So now we're getting more water flooding the property from the back going to the front. And I have talked to my neighbors and asked them to stop adding to raise their land, because on both sides both properties have raised their lands over the years, and I'm lower than anybody else, since my property is probably the oldest one that has been there over the 40, no, more than that, 70 years.
Okay, so all those efforts haven't really been effective. You still have the same issue,
Yeah.
flooding?
Yes,
And then did you do most of that work yourself or did you?
yes.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Colatriglio, any questions?
Well, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions that haven't been asked and answered. So summation, Mr. Froelich, you wanted to do a summation.
I just wanted to just clarify with the applicant with regards to how reference dates work. Both the 2023, and this is for future knowledge, both for the 2023 and 2024 value. The reference date was April 1st, 2020. For the value in 2025 and 2026, the reference date is April 1st, 2023. So in terms of the overall valuation for this property, we felt based on the market evidence that increase was warranted. And which is why I made a recommendation of 345, and I had reduced the assessment by over $50,000. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Applicant, any summation you wish to do?
Well, I guess I don't understand these letters that I received from the city then, because it says general assessment year 2023 is reference date April 1st, 2021. General 2025 reference date 2023. So we're out on years here.
It's a 2-year cycle, sir. So the value in 2023 and 2024 references April 1st, April 1st, 2021. And you are correct, because and then for 2025, it's April 1st, 2023.
Good. Okay. No, I got no under.
Okay, so thank you very much. That concludes this property. Let's move on now to 45 Mobile Street. Is there someone going to be online, Mr. Lund?
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
There is no applicant present for 45 Mobile.
Okay, then we'll deal with that at the end. Then we'll move on to 121 Gomez.
The applicant is just connecting right now.
Okay.
And I will need to affirm them. Mr. Francis, I'll just check that your microphone is working.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I will affirm you now. Please state your full name.
Colin George Francis.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Froelich, on 121 Gomez Street, I understand you're requesting non-cooperation. Please proceed on the well, first of all, with the base information and then the non-co-op.
Yep. So it's file number 24-1217, roll numbers 140000248-000. Initial assessment was for $642,000, and I'm prepared to make a recommendation for the 2026 year of $594. And I will now go through my argument with regards to the non-compliance.
Okay.
Some general property. So historically, this property owner has completed his income and expense information, but as policy, we need to ask for it when it's not been provided to us. So on page 2, we have the initial request on April 23, asking for the mailer for 2022. So here's the first letter that was sent out. And then on page 3 is the subsequent information. On page 4 is the registered letter that went out on June 9th, 2023, making the same request for the 2022 income and expense mailer information. And then you see the details there with regards to the roll number and Gomez. And then on page 5. On page 6, we have documentation showing us that the letter was sent out and delivered. And we have the signature that was sent out on the bottom of page 7. I'd now like you to reference on my brief, page 11, which shows the history of compliance for the property owner. So property owner has been consistent in regards to filling out the income and expense mailer operation, but for whatever reason, they missed 2021 and 2022, but they have a history of complying from 2012 to 2023 minus the 2 years. So I'm asking for non-compliance based on the fact that they did not provide us the 22 income and expense mailer. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Francis, any questions of the assessor on his evidence?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Colatriglio, any questions?
No.
Ms. Duncan, any questions?
Just wondering why it wasn't provided.
Well, of the assessor.
Oh, sorry. No questions of the
No, but
Okay.
Sorry.
I can't answer the question because Mr. Francis and I had many conversations with regards to this. Mr. Francis was not familiar with our legislation, so I had ended up sending him copies with it. There was actually a change of personnel who had usually filled out the mailer, the income and expense mailer for us, and that's the reason why it wasn't provided.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and I
Oh.
have no questions. So, Mr. Francis, your response to the request for non-co-op.
Yeah. So I guess on the terms of the value, we agree with the assessor, $594,000. And with respect to the non-compliance, as Mr. Froelich indicated, there was the person that was responsible for returning the information was no longer at the company at the time of receiving, I guess when the company received the mailers for 2021 and 2022. There was a turnover, and then when the new director of finance was on board, that's when the 2023 was mailed in. So that is the reason for the non-compliance, non-cooperation, and we're asking for relief from this section and some leniency from this board and panel for the non-cooperation. The history of the compliance is in both reports. They were complied for 2010 to 2020. Subsequently, when there was a new director of finance, they complied with 2023. And in good faith, in the report, the 2021 and 2022, which were not submitted at time, have been added as a schedule. Again, in good faith to the assessment, for the assessor and assessment authority to have it in their records. So I think that's, if we agreed on the value and there's been this historical compliance, 21 and 22 is now included. 2023 has also been that was mailed on time. I think I guess what we're just asking for is relief from section 53.3.
Okay, Mr. Froelich, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Colatriglio, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Duncan, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, I guess the panel, we will take a recess and consider the request for the non-co-op. All right, thank you. We're back in session now. The panel has talked about the non-co-op and we are going to grant it. Unfortunately, I mean, there are definitely mitigating circumstances here. But the case law very much is that if the city asks then the owner has to provide, and the courts have ruled that once the city asks for non-co-op in those circumstances, then we have no discretion not to grant it. That would normally require Mr. Francis to go first and present his evidence. But as I understand, there's a general agreement on value. Can I ask Mr. Froelich then to read his valuation?
So the value of $594,000 is based on the following on page 10 of my brief. The initial rent was $194, and I dropped the rent to $185. We kept the 15% vacancy, the $4 shortfall, the 3% for expenses, to come up with a net operating income of $60,040, utilizing a 10% cap rate because this is a very old warehouse building. The value that we have presented here is $594,000.
Okay, and Mr. Francis, I understand you're willing to accept that valuation?
Yes.
All right. Are there any questions from the panel on the valuation?
No questions, thank you.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, all right. Thank you very much then. That concludes this property.
Thank you.
So we will go back to 45 Mobile Street. And I understand, Mr. Lund, that is the applicant online or anything?
The applicant is not present.
Okay, so then we will deal with property in the absence of the applicant. So Mr. Froelich, if you could give your
Mr. Chair will need to go on camera.
okay. All right, welcome back. The panel has discussed this matter, and we are going to hear 45 Mobile Street in the absence of the applicant. So, Mr. Froelich, your presentation, please.
File number is 24-665. Roll number is 140986-84400. 45 Mobile. The initial value was $919,000, and it's based on the fact that it's a 2003 building. The land to building ratio is 16:1, and by looking at the property, we felt that an overall value of $865,000 would be a reasonable amount.
Okay, and that's based on a reduced rent?
Yeah, just let me. Yes, that's a reduced rent. Just bear with me here for 1 sec. Yeah, where the rent dropped from $7.48 to $7.
Okay, have you been in communication with the owner on
Yeah,
this?
she the person I've been dealing with, her name's Jennifer.
Okay.
And she had told me about with regards to the ownership situation, and I actually sent her a print screen of my of the brief of my brief that I presented to you guys today, or that you have in front of you.
Yep.
So she's okay with the value based on our conversations.
All right. Okay. Any questions from the panel to Mr. Froelich? Mike?
Thank you.
I'm just trying to it's just a number thing. So the income valuation talks about it being 823.4, and you just mentioned 865. Which number is it?
Well, you're on page 6 of my brief.
Page 5 is the income valuation.
That was the initial one, and my recommendations on page 6.
Oh, I see it. Thank you so much. That was the only one.
Okay, sorry for that. My cell phone was ringing. Forgot to put it on mute. Okay, so now we have that concludes this property then. We have now heard all the properties on today's agenda, and the hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much, Merrick.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good.
Take care, guys.